They say cannibals eat flesh only to survive. But what happens when human meat becomes such a delicacy that everyday people begin craving it like fine cuisine? That's exactly the nightmare that unfolds in a modest butcher shop in France. At first glance, the place looks ordinary, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, yet every morning a crowd swarms outside. Why? The shop sells a kind of meat so mouth-watering that people will pay any price just to taste it. Lines stretch down the block, traffic clogs the nearby streets, and customers argue over who gets served next. The more people taste it, the more addicted they become. Word spreads quickly. This is no ordinary cut of pork or beef. This is something rare, unforgettable. The owner, Vincent, keeps up the illusion with a simple lie. When a customer asks what kind of meat it is, he tells them it's Iranian pork, a mysterious delicacy hardly anyone has heard of. That one phrase transforms the shop overnight. What was once a failing business suddenly turns into a gold mine. Before this, Vincent and his wife Sophie could barely keep their doors open. Their butcher shop was on the brink of collapse, drowning in debt, hounded by animal rights activists who despised their trade. Those activists vandalized the store repeatedly, splashing animal blood across Sophie's clothes, smashing windows and terrifying customers away. With each attack, Vincent sank deeper into despair, feeling like his livelihood was being strangled. Meanwhile, their friends Mark and Stephanie thrived. Mark ran a large, successful butcher shop with steady income and loyal customers. Whenever Vincent and Sophie visited, the contrast gnawed at them. Sophie even started threatening divorce, blaming Vincent for their misfortune. He begged her to stay patient, but the tension was unbearable. Then came the accident that changed everything. One evening, Vincent spotted a familiar face, the very activist who had tormented his shop. Overcome with rage, Vincent revved his car to scare him. But fate twisted cruelly. The activist stumbled, ended up under the wheels, and died instantly. Panic seized Vincent. He wanted to call the police, but Sophie stopped him. No one would believe it was an accident. They'd be branded murderers. Instead, she whispered a horrifying plan: cut the body into pieces, scatter them, and erase the evidence. Vincent recoiled, but Sophie's cold logic cornered him. That night, he forced himself to butcher the corpse. Hours of cutting and grinding left him numb and trembling. Exhausted, he collapsed, only to wake up in shock. Some of the meat was gone. Sophie admitted she had mixed it with pork and sold it to a customer. And that customer returned the very next morning, demanding more. She swore it was the most delicious meat she'd ever tasted. Vincent refused at first, but Sophie persuaded him that it was the perfect way to hide the crime. Branding it Iranian pork gave them cover. Soon, demand exploded. Customers swore by its flavor, telling their friends, and the shop's reputation soared. Vincent, still doubtful, finally tasted it himself. To his horror, he found Sophie was right. It was the best meat he'd ever eaten. Sophie offered her own twisted explanation. Vegans live on plants alone, so their flesh is cleaner, purer, and more flavorful. Why not kill more vegans and keep selling their meat? Vincent resisted, insisting they couldn't cross that line, but the seed was planted. The next turning point came when their daughter Chloe introduced her boyfriend Lucas. Vincent prepared dinner proudly, but Lucas refused a single bite. He was vegan. Chloe, influenced by him, also pushed her plate away. Vincent's blood boiled. In one evening, the boy had insulted his food, ruined his work, and threatened to expose the truth. That night, Sophie pushed harder. She convinced Vincent to stalk a vegan restaurant owner. Knife in hand, Vincent crept toward him, but when the moment came, his hands shook uncontrollably. He couldn't do it. They needed more practice. So they joined vegan groups, pretending to be sympathetic, looking for weak prey. They targeted a frail man, lured him toward the parking lot, but his friends showed up unexpectedly, ruining their plan. Those same friends, mistaking Vincent and Sophie for allies, invited them to join an attack on a butcher shop. To Vincent's shock, the target was Mark's store. He joined in, smashing his rival's property, secretly satisfied to see Mark suffer losses. During the chaos, Sophie was left alone and began flirting with one of the young activists. When she realized he was vegan, she invited him home. As Vincent hesitated again, Sophie mocked him, saying if he didn't kill the boy, she'd sleep with him instead. Jealous rage consumed Vincent. That night, he finally crossed the line, killing the boy brutally. From that moment on, their descent was unstoppable. The shop's fame spread. Iranian pork became a phenomenon. Even as they raised prices, the line of customers never shrank. They were making millions while established meat factories faced closure. Vincent's friends, Mark and Stephanie, eventually tried the meat themselves. Mark adored it instantly, but Stephanie, once a nurse, bit into something hard. A pacemaker left from one of Vincent's victims. Suspicion erupted into a fight between the couples. Vincent lost control, biting Mark's ear in fury, severing their friendship forever. Meanwhile, Vincent's psyche unraveled. He developed uncontrollable cravings. At a vegan festival, he stared at a child and imagined devouring him. The horror of his thoughts made him sick, but the desire was real. Lucas reappeared, confronting Vincent in public. Their argument was overheard by former activist allies who realized Vincent had betrayed them. Now danger lurked everywhere. Even the family dog dragged home a severed hand, nearly exposing everything to a visiting policeman. Sophie, however, grew more reckless. She insisted Lucas should be their next victim. Vincent, realizing she had become an even bigger psychopath than him, refused. He threw Lucas out, determined to put an end to the madness. The next morning, he told customers the shop was no longer selling Iranian pork. The crowd erupted in fury, storming out. Sophie lashed out at him, calling him weak, but while he was gone, a group of thugs disguised as vegans stormed in seeking revenge. They captured Sophie and beat her savagely. When Vincent returned, he found her moments from death. He fought back viciously, killing 2 attackers while Sophie finished the third with a hook to the eye. But their relief was short-lived. Mark and Stephanie had already tipped off the police. Investigators uncovered evidence of the murders. Vincent and Sophie were arrested and charged with 30 killings. Their empire of blood collapsed in an instant. The court sentenced them both to death by hanging. And so the story ends, a grotesque journey from desperation to obsession. What began as a butcher's struggle to survive spiraled into one of the darkest businesses imaginable. A tale of greed, madness, and flesh, where Vincent and Sophie not only destroyed their humanity but also created a craving that devoured an entire city.